Hey guys, Drifter here. Today I've got a video for you that's one part gaming and one part philosophy. Today we are going to be talking about determinism, which is roughly the belief that everything is predetermined. One thing that is predetermined though is the gameplay that you're going to get to see. It's going to be a little bit of mix of Call of Duty and Apex Legends. Those are the two games I'm playing and having fun with, so I'm just going to mix and mash as needed, but it should be good all the way through. So enjoy that while you listen to me talk about this complicated philosophical topic. We're going to hit the highlights today. So determinism is kind of like everything is predetermined. Like I said, it's kind of like a time travel movie where nothing can be changed. There's no free will, no human element, no changing the past to fix the future, no deviation from the course upon which you are set. Every action is caused by a previous action or actions. Multiple things, of course, can come together. And this goes all the way back to the very beginning of time. Everything has a cause and an effect, and those effects have more causes that affect more things infinitely, kind of like the story of history or chemistry or physics or every single science that we know about. This is the way that I often think about things, and I believe that many of you do too. I think a lot of people do see the world as one thing flowing into another and one thing causes the next, etc., but there are a few problems with this philosophy, and we're going to move into physics very briefly because determinism is one of the few areas of philosophy that directly ties into physics, because physics directly determines how everything works down to a subatomic level. I mean, effectively, chemistry is just a less advanced version of physics. All you need to know is the values of something, the positions of the atoms, the energies, the directions, all the variables, and you have a perfect prediction. It's how all of our science works. We know the things, we run the math, we get the prediction, it works, the science is good, right? And since physics can predict anything, if you know enough information, you can predict everything. It's sort of the ultimate goal of science is to understand literally everything, how it fits together, how it works, what it does, what thing causes the next, etc. However, this level of understanding may not be possible to obtain due to the information size limits. It's kind of like, how can a thing have more knowledge than the summation of all of its parts? If you are a brain comprised of cells and atoms, etc., in order to know everything about yourself, much less the entire universe, these brains and atoms somehow need to learn all of their own motions and predictions and variants, all these little variables about themselves, and each one of them has more information than one of them can contain, so it's sort of a puzzle like that. However, this does lead into one of my favorite thought experiments called Laplace's Demon. I think I just like the name of it. I like demons and, monsters and ghosts and stuff. That's kind of fun for me. But instead of an actual, real, physical, demon from hell or whatever, Laplace's Demon is a thought experiment about determinism. And we're going to do it together. I want you to imagine an all-powerful, or at least nearly all-powerful being, something really smart, much smarter than a human being, much smarter than a supercomputer or an AI, something that has a godlike intellect. And let's say that this being either somehow knows naturally or intuitively, or it gets a really, really accurate measurement of all the forces in the universe at a particular time. And by all forces, I mean everything. Every single little thing that you can possibly imagine, every orbit of an electron, every charge, every weight, every beam of light, speck of dust, every wind gust, everything in the universe, all at once it knows. Given that it knows literally everything about one singular instance and has a godlike intellect enough to, calculate all these things forward, can Laplace's demon perfectly predict the future? Would this demon therefore be all-knowing because every action comes from a previous action? It should be able to see infinitely into the future and tell you exactly what's going to happen at a certain time. Or conversely, since one thing causes another, it can tell you exactly what happened in the past, even if it was not there to observe it. So, given all of this, is it possible that thoughts and ideas, which are ultimately just electrochemical balances between our brain cells, which are composed of atoms, which are composed of smaller subatomic particles, could those be predicted? Could the demon know your every thought and every future thought that you would have without any error because it knows the values of all the little atoms and electrons and cells in your brain? And if that's true, that it'll say it can know your thoughts because it knows everything about the little particles that make up your brain, does that mean you have free will? The short answer to this is, of course, no. If it's true that something can know literally everything about you down to the very last atomic little detail, and that it all predicts accurately forward into the future, then you really don't have free will. If this is true, then you and me and everybody else that you know is little more than a chemical machine. To be fair, it's a very complex chemical machine, one that is very, the most advanced thing on the planet, much more than anything that we've ever built, but it's still a machine. It can be predicted. You can tell what it's going, what it's going to do, where it's going to go in the future, etc., etc. And this is kind of a depressing thought. If you think about yourself as a collection of atoms that are predetermined and they're going away and doing a thing, and you can't really change that because one thing causes another, then you're really in control of nothing. You really are just a machine. You're kind of there along for the ride. And one alternative to this is that knowledge of these causes actually frees you from them. You would be kind of like the only machine that's self-aware, which is actually a shockingly accurate description of how the human mind works. But if you know about all of these causes, what it can do is it can give you the ability to understand your own actions and be more comfortable with them instead of depressed about it, or maybe even the ability to reject the causes and choose a different, better, or worse path for yourself because you don't want to participate in said determinism. And there's also a sort of different solution, like what if determinism is true, but you also have an immortal or immaterial soul? The idea of the human consciousness, the human psyche, is a phenomenon that is truly beyond physics and predictability, nearly in the magic territory that we really do have unique, independent thoughts that are not just electrochemical signals bouncing around. If human souls exist and they're beyond physics, then we are beyond determinism. Our actions are not predetermined. The only problem with this, of course, is we don't really know. We don't really know if we have souls or anything like that. We don't really know any of these things because we, as human beings, are small-minded, and no person ever will have all the knowledge to predict everything, because even Laplace's Demon basically couldn't exist because it would have to have all the knowledge about itself as well, and it would run into the same problem of it would have to be smarter than itself, which is kind of an impossible thing. A different way to think about this, I'm going to go a little bit off track here, and I'm going to talk about books. A very good criticism of determinism is Kurt Vonnegut's novel Slaughterhouse-Five. Sadly, this isn't a slasher novel or movie. I really thought it was when I was a kid. I was really let down. I heard Slaughterhouse. I thought it was going to be like some Texas Chainsaw Massacre, awesome stuff. It's not. The Slaughterhouse number 5, is the name of the one that he took cover in when the Americans firebombed Dresden, Germany during World War II. The basic plot of this book is that a person, who's kind of him, he kind of wrote himself into the book, gets unstuck in time and experiences time out of order. He experiences old age before young and then middle, and some things go really fast and some things go in reverse and some things are always going. He's just not really experiencing time like a normal person. And this kind of puts him on the radar of some aliens that abduct him and take him to go do some kind of silly things. But these aliens are unique because they experience time all at once. The aliens see past, present, forward, future, everything literally all at once. They're basically all Laplace's demons. They all know everything. They're essentially omniscient. And initially, as you read through this book, the main character is really kind of in awe of these aliens. They know everything. They're wise. They're blah blah blah. But as the book goes on, he later begins to hate them, and you realize that the book is a criticism of these aliens. Since they know everything, and in their vision of the world, they can't change or do anything, they're lazy, they're indifferent. They never really do much of anything because to them it's already done or is currently being done, and their perspective on reality is grossly warped. This book is a fantastic way to think about determinism and the problems with human free will versus what your particles are telling you to do, for lack of a better word. It's a really fun read. It's a really sarcastic book. It's sort of a nice forgotten history of World War II as well, because along with Nagasaki and Hiroshima, one of the things we did is we firebombed Dresden, Germany, and killed almost as many people as Hiroshima, and pretty much flattened the entire city. It was horrific. He only survived because he was lucky enough to be in the basement. It's an anti-war book, though. It's kind of one of those weird, like, books written by World War II soldiers that aren't very patriotic, so kind of prepare yourself for that. And finally, at the very end of this video, there are 3 main scientific arguments against determinism being real. For a philosophy video, we have a lot of science going on today. The first one is simple thermodynamics and entropy. Because of entropy, there is increasing disorder in every system, which means that any deterministic system is going to get increasingly more difficult to predict. And because of the amount of disorder in many systems, you actually can't make predictions about what something looked like in the past. For example, if I were to put a banana in a blender and grind it up and give it to a scientist, they could look at it and be like, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's a banana, but they couldn't tell me exactly what it looked like. They couldn't perfectly replicate it. You can't unblend the banana. It's permanently blended. So then something like Laplace's Demon maybe could see the future. It definitely could not predict the past. The other argument against, I think, is kind of the best one of the group. It's quantum mechanics. But we try not to get into quantum mechanics on this channel because it makes me want to eat glass. But essentially, quantum mechanics says that all subatomic particles, smaller than atoms, that's literally the meaning of the word, the things that we really can't see or measure, all kind of work on a probability table. If I drop a ball, it's going to fall down and hit the ground 100% of the time, but in quantum mechanics, it might fall down 75% of the time and up 25%. So all of your predictions from quantum mechanics aren't hard determinism. They're not predetermined. They happen on a probability table. They can tell you what the odds are of something happening, but not exactly how it happens. Therefore, sort of the God plays dice, or the entire universe is actually a random and infinitely unpredictable system. Personally, I don't like quantum mechanics because, number one, it's complex, and number two, it's just sort of opposite of everything that we know and understand. But to the best of it's the best thing we've got now, and if it's real, that means determinism is complete nonsense. And finally, there's chaos theory, the math version of it. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with, the butterfly flaps its wings, there's a hurricane somewhere else, and how little variables get out of control and make big changes. But the math version of it is essentially that you can get really crazy and unpredictable results from a deterministic system, a system where you know all the variables, where you can see all the things. When you run it through enough iterations, it can start doing surprising things that you could not possibly predict. And the more complex the system, like our world, the more unpredictable, and the less you know about the initial conditions, or minor differences in initial conditions lead to ridiculous results downstream. So chaos theory is sort of a mathematical fun way to say, hey guys, we don't really know everything. And that's sort of where this video ends. I don't really have a solid answer for you today on if determinism is real, if everything is predetermined and fixed in stone because one thing causes another, or if we as human beings have risen above that with our free will, or if because of quantum mechanics it's all just poppycock. If I knew the answer to this one, it would actually be the absolute truth of the universe. I would have to go found my own religion and teach people the way. So since I don't know the answer, this video is just food for thought for you today. Give something to kind of work your brain over, a little gameplay to enjoy. I hope you enjoyed this little bit of gaming philosophy. If you did, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. Drifter out.